All right, so this is podcast testing between Helter Skelter from the forum and
Cobra.
we're in my apartment. We're talking about a whole bunch of different game stuff, Chicago, Indian Man game options, and just kind of maybe doing something with a podcast, doing some more outreach, getting some feedback on what we're going through as far as guys gaming. A bunch of different demographics here. We got black dudes, white dudes, Indian dudes. We got guys who are older, guys who are younger, people who are various stages of relationships and things like that. A lot of different experiences. So, what should we talk about first?
Yeah, I mean, Helter Skelter, you make a good point about, those different themes that are out there, whether it's age, race, different game theories versus actions, and, how guys generally go about, lifestyles. So, those are all good topics to talk about, but, maybe what we could start out with is, just talking about, how the manosphere affects guys that really get on, and how self-confidence affects that.
Well, getting in there's maybe a new guy and just kind of
maybe we could start there, right? I mean, that's a cool idea because there's a lot of new guys that get on the forum,
and I'm not like this super player or anything. I'm just kind of like an average dude.
Neither am I think.
Like a little bit about my background. I mean, like I was in the Marine Corps, and I've when I was in, I was sort of slaying pussy a little bit more, and now that I'm out, it's sort of I've had to readjust back to the civilian world, and I've gotten, to be honest, man, I've had like maybe 3 or 4 lays since I've been out, it's just a completely different kind of world. But having found the manosphere was, and especially like I was looking. I was actually searching for porn on my computer one night. This is actually how I found it. And I typed something into Google, like girls or sluts, and I came up with this article, Moses' article about how to tell if she's a slut.
Right.
And I just started reading this, and I was like, I completely forgot about jacking off. I was just like, started reading all this, I read every single article that was out there on ROK that night. And this was, a little while back when I could still read everything. Now they have like so many articles that you can't read everything, but that's sort of how I found it. And then I met up with the first person I met was about almost a year ago, I want to say, maybe not quite a year ago. And then I met with you and a few other guys, and we sort of started this Chicago tribe.
And the tribe is really active right now. And a little introduction with me is a lot of people don't know a few things about me, but maybe not other things. I'm actually an Indian dude that actually immigrated from India when I was 12, but it's somewhat similar to Helter Skelter. I joined the Navy when I was 18. I was there for 4 years, got out and actually did reserves for another 4 years, so kind of part-time. In total I did 8, but for me, I did it to find my identity, kind of similar to what we're talking about for this podcast, which is guys trying to find their identity. Like Helter Skelter said, he kind of looked out into the manosphere to find that. Same thing I did. I was misguided, which is why I joined the military. But once I got out, I felt even more misguided because there's this one thing that guided me in the right direction, and I was following those rules. And then you get out into the civilian world, and you're like, oh crap, now I got to find my identity. And then I kind of have 2 things to reconcile, which is, one, do I be Indian? Do I be a sailor, like from the Navy, or now do I become American? Because I was never really American to start with. I was kind of growing up as an Indian kid that kind of got made fun of. So and now I'm trying to find that identity. That's why I found the manosphere.
And that's the subject, I think, of most newbie posts is, and I know it's the first thing I did. I was like, man, I don't know who am I? Who am I? This kind of guy coming onto the forum. I don't really, I said something about like I had sort of this like almost feminized upbringing, but then I sort of kind of like thought more about, and I realized my upbringing, is more nuanced than that. There's a lot of stuff that kind of contributes to who I am, but then there's also like game, and there's there's approaches, and then there's, you know, things you actually do. There's other guys that you interact with. You get wingmen. You get, you know, you have to look at locations and stuff. And then all the while you have, you know, even though you're part of this forum and you're doing all this stuff, you have to, you know, kind of take care of your own life. You have to,
Right.
you know, make some money. You have to find a way to do that. You have to, you know, take care of shit that just happens with being an adult.
Right.
And so balancing all that, you know, but I've found that this way of thinking and game and everything has really kind of influenced the direction my life has taken since then. You know, decisions
Yeah.
I've made, it's changed a lot, and I think definitely for the better.
Yeah, and plus you have a support system now.
Mhm.
And, you know, one of the things is, you know, guys that come into the manosphere, they really don't know which direction to take. And I mean, a lot of the guys that come into the manosphere are not like the guys that already have guidance. I mean, you've got two categories of people, right? You know, you got the guys that, you know, maybe already have the confidence and they go in to just learn the game
Mm-hmm.
and approach girls. So, you know, they might be tall, they might be in good shape, and, you know, they know they're good looking, but they can't get girls.
Mm-hmm.
Those guys come into the manosphere just like the guys that, you know, are skinny, they might not have the confidence, and they've also never gotten girls. So, you know, not getting girls kind of is a theme that brings everybody together. But,
Right.
you know, you got two different spectrums of sort of guys that
Right.
I see coming into the manosphere, and they kind of converge. And, you know, behind all of this is that issue of self-confidence, which, you know, the taller, better-looking guys have less of an issue with, but, you know, skinnier, you know, guys that don't think they're good-looking, not necessarily because they're not,
Mm-hmm.
you know, they have less, actually I should say less, but more of an issue with self-confidence that really, really needs to be fixed before they can even approach girls, because these are the guys that,
You don't.
as you know, they do 1,000 approaches. And
Well,
they
that's
might not get
interesting.
anywhere.
Like you, I mean, are you saying that, you know, maybe you have to get your head right before you start approaching? Because you remember that thread. You should be very lean before even considering adding muscle.
Yeah,
And I think there was a pretty diverse, you know, kind of response to
Right.
that. Some people were like, you know, no, just go for it. You know, just get in there. And then
Right.
some people were saying, well, you know, but you look at these guys. Like I remember. Well, I'm not going to say his username, but there was a few guys. You know, a guy about a year ago or so who did 1,500 approaches, and I think it was pretty well
Yeah, I think I
documented.
know which username.
Yeah, and
I think as we mentioned it, if
I
any
don't
forum
know what
members are
happened to
listening.
him. I think he just kind of stopped with his game for a while because he, you know, after 1,200 approaches, let's
Yeah.
say even if he only did like 500 approaches,
Mhm.
that would, you know, be kind of demoralizing. So
Right.
maybe obviously there's another issue there.
Right.
And I think
Right.
a lot of the posts and a lot of the stuff on the forum you see, guys have, you know, they say, well, why isn't this working?
Right, right. And you know, the forum sort of, I mean, it's a misunderstanding that a lot of guys have that, hey, if I do 100 approaches versus 200 to 300 approaches, that I'm going to start seeing results automatically
Mhm.
just because I follow like a mechanized or basically just go through the motions of
Mhm.
an approach. And, you know, if I come at a certain degree with a girl every single time, or, you know, if I adjust myself just a little bit, that it should work. But really, I mean, it sucks that I'm saying this, but it's not that all of that stuff that works. It's the self-confidence. I mean, it's about believing that you can do it. And, you know, if you believe you could do it, then it's just a matter of technique. But if you don't believe
Right.
in yourself, no technique is going to give you results.
Because you can always hone your technique
Right.
once you've actually kind of had the experience to relate it to.
Right.
You can say, oh, I can look
Absolutely.
back at this and see that I've done wrong, you know, or I've done this right. But if you haven't done any approaches, you can't even say that because you have nothing to compare it to.
Absolutely, and plus, you know, you're going to be kind of negated by the guidance you received as a kid. I mean, it could be anything. Like, you know, what you were saying, you might not have guidance as a kid.
Mm-hmm.
And you said something about being raised feminized in it, and you know, a lot of cultures are very feminized when you compare it to the West. Like
Yeah.
culture I grew up in, not necessarily feminized, but at the same time, it's not a very approach culture. It's an arranged marriage culture,
Well,
you don't really approach girls.
Yeah.
You're not taught to.
right.
Whereas in a feminized culture, it's a common theme. You're not really taught to approach girls that way because, a lot of people would argue in a feminized culture and feminized family, you're not really encouraging your boys to approach girls because they think that's objectifying them or something.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
So nobody approaches in those types of backgrounds, and it's funny we converge and talk about this because that's a common theme where neither of us have done that before, so we had the anxiety, and now knowing in the manosphere there's guys that do this all the time and get results. I mean, we want to follow the same techniques and we want to raise our self-confidence to get to that point.
Let's talk about some of those actual experiences. Let me maybe share an experience I had last night. I went out in Chicago and I went. I got out around like 11:30. Went to a few different places, and it was it's a weeknight, so it's not going to be that easy to find women. What I ended up doing was
plus you're in a very end of the year
sort
of cold holiday rut.
The holiday rut. So the availability wasn't that great, but I had to make myself kind of go out and put in the time. And this reminded me of back when I was younger, when I was still in the Marines, or even before then, where I would go to friends' houses, I would go to clubs, and I would just be looking, and it would take me time to really put that time in before I actually, was able to find